What's up, everybody? It's your boy LondonBridge here for Space Yacht Radio. Today on the show, very special guest. Very excited about this. We have Kaskade on the show. Not in the building.
That would be bad.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't do that anymore, man. Not this week, anyway.
You know, I think it's interesting, the whole take on, like, we're going to see that people can, like, work from home and be just as productive. But for me, that has not been the case at all. I actually like being in the room with people, and, like, whether it's for this show or whether it's being creative, I find this distance a little bit difficult on the creative tip.
I hate that part.
Yeah, right. It's like, and I think, like, everybody's talking about, like, for DJs and producers, like, oh, now you can, like, work on, like, so many records and do all this stuff. I don't know about you. It's been, like, weird I haven't been productive at all. I've been very, like.
So that's interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, I in the studio, who was it that I was just reading an interview with? This is maybe like a month ago. The guy's like, oh, it's Kate Tronada. He's like, I never like have the people in the room. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of the same way. There's like a handful of people that I work with that I've had long relationships that I'm personal friends with, that I like sitting down and working with. But pretty much everybody else, I prefer it the other way around. I'd rather just like get stuff with you. And it's that whole, to me, for the studio thing, it's more of like that whole, you got to have the first date, then you got to have the second date. By the third date, you're kind of cool with one another and you can say what you kind of mean. So for me in the studio, I prefer not to be in there because there's all those weird, like you don't want to offend somebody, like, yeah, that sucks, don't do that, you know? Right. When they send it, you're like, that's cool, or I'm just going to use this section or that for. So you don't have to have that whole like weird song and dance where you don't want to offend them because you don't like that part of the idea or whatever. So there's a handful of people, and I just bring up Skylar Gray's name because we hung out 3 or 4 times, 5 times socially before we actually went to the studio. We kept just kind of hanging out, and then we're like, oh damn, yeah, we got to do that thing where we make music now. That's why we met one another. Let's sit down and do that. By the time we did it, we were totally cool, and there wasn't the weird thing where it was like, oh, try less of this and more of that. Well, 100%. Not only that, she's amazing, but so everything she did, I was like, more.
I like the metaphor of like dates, because it's like whenever I've done collabs with anybody that I don't know, it's always been weird. It doesn't mean the music will be bad, but it's like you want to have fun in the studio, right? It's
sure.
Like, it's like
that's the whole idea. And if you don't totally jive, then it's like, oh, this is awkward.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you. Everything else in my life, I much more prefer to be in the same room. Like, let's just sit down and talk about it, hash it out, because you get so much more done.
Yeah.
Quickly.
There's also seems to be, I wanted to get your take on this, like, not for the first time, but in a very odd way, like there's this global emotional depression because everybody's going through the same thing. There's this like weird unity in all of this. Not every, I know not every country has been hit as hard, but like they're all going to, right? So it's like, right, for the first time, we can actually maybe almost be empathetic with one another for the first time because we're all going through this. And at the same time, I feel like there's this just kind of cloud, you know what I mean? Where it's like, everybody's kind of like, this difficult stuff.
For sure. And I think us here in LA, it was so weird that first week that everybody was kind of going on lockdown. It rained for like 7 or 8 days straight, which is so unusual here. I mean, I've lived in California for 20 years and there's like one other time I can remember it doing that. Yeah. And it was just weird. Like everybody was just walking around sad and bummed, and like the streets were empty and it was raining, and it's like, it's the end of the world. Yeah. I mean, on like the 4th day of it raining and thundering, I was like, maybe it actually is the end of the world. I don't know. This is weird.
It was very ominous. It was like the timing of that was pretty crazy. Although hopefully that was a good thing at the time. It kept people off the beaches, off the public places, because it's been such a slow burn on getting people to really, people haven't been understanding. I like early on, I was DMing people trying to be like, yo, you should probably stop playing shows. Even the last Space Out we threw, I was already like, we shouldn't be throwing this. You know what I mean? It was like they hadn't shut everything down. And even me and Henry, my partner in Space Out, we were both like, this is probably the last show. There's no way that you can keep that going. Especially the other thing that I found is that at the club, like people are all kind of spitting on one another. Like they're up in your ear, they're talking to you close, people are hugging, they're sweaty, so it's weird. I all of a sudden found myself to be a bit of like a hypochondriac because I was like, dude, like you were spitting all over me. I mean, you
You're
probably
like,
get that worse. You get that worse than
back
I do.
up. Oh, yeah, it happens all the time. Which, by the way, I'm eating some of my lunch here as we speak.
Dude,
I don't know what the protocol is on
there's
that,
no
but
protocol. We're out
I
here.
feel like since you're not next to me, I can like kind of be off camera eating my
Well,
chicken salad.
in general, this is more of a conversation and less of an interview in that kind of respect. So
Excellent.
we try to keep
Excellent.
we try to keep it light. But I mean, but getting okay. As I say that, then getting into my list of questions.
Let's go. Come on,
so
man.
you I don't know if you've been following this. Like now, live streaming has become like this amazing platform. Obviously, the tech has been there. We know all about it. Insomniac, Ultra, everybody's been live streaming for a long time. But now, it's really like the culture has to do it, right? Because we don't have the live event outlet to do it anymore. Have you been catching any of these? I mean, Beyond Wonderland, the Insomniac did that really cool Beyond Wonderland thing. You're doing that the Twitch stream aid that's coming up. Like, what's been your take on the live streams? Like, any of them stand out to you?
Listen, I think it's cool. It's we're adapting.
Yeah.
But this isn't the answer.
Right.
I don't know where we're headed. And believe me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and so is everyone on my team. Like, if we're going to have any kind of future, like, what is it going to look like? And I say that, listen, I think we're going to come out of this. I think things are going to be a little bit different. Sure, I don't know what they look like on the other side, and I'm not pretending to. But I think in this kind of interim over these next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I don't know how long we're going to hold out here. I've got a lot of opinions on that, but I think it's cool. It's a way all of us are used to standing in front of people every weekend and getting out and DJing and doing our thing and having a show. It's something we love. I mean, I've always said DJing is like the coolest kind of like active music listening hobby you could ever have. Because it's like, before I DJ'd, I was still sitting around listening to records. And then next I was like, oh, I can actually stand up here and mess with them and manipulate them and create my own mix here in front of my friends. So it was always just a fun way to pass time. Mm-hmm. I think the problem is, to get down to like, to boil it down, I think they're cool and they're fun and it's great to do, but the best part of going to a show is connecting with all these people around you and seeing them interact and feel passionately about the music the way you do. You're like, man, I just spent $100 to see this dude. Oh my gosh, he's blowing my mind. And you look, next to you, and the person's just like, having that same moment to some song that they released 5 years ago that you both are like, oh man, this B-side is killer. I love this cut. Oh my gosh. Like, that's part of the magic, right? And it's like, as cool as streaming can be, it's never going to replace the live experience. It's just something that we're kind of doing in the interim. But back to that's one of the problems, right? That's the very obvious one. The second big thing is that all of us make our livings off of tickets being sold. I don't know how much people know or don't know about this. Like, dude, 99% of my income is from touring. 1% is from t-shirts, revenue from streaming. I don't know, like the random, like weird guest appearance somewhere, somebody's sponsoring something, whatever. I mean, it adds up to almost nothing, all of that stuff. And people are always like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, streaming revenue? Like, I don't even look at the checks because they're so small. It's just like ridiculous. I mean, like, honestly, Spotify could probably just stop cutting me checks and I would not even notice a difference. It wouldn't affect my life at all. So the problem is like, cool, is we can stream and do all that stuff and it's wonderful. And I love doing it. I love being out there and connecting with people, but all of us make our livings. Like, I pay my rent in this studio here comes from shows.
Right.
So if I'm not going to be doing any shows, cool. My studio's not going to look like this. I'm not going to be in downtown Santa Monica in a beautiful studio, like making music with my friends. It's not going to happen. I'm going to be back in my kitchen or basement, which is fine. That's cool. I'm like ready to make those changes. But I think when you kind of constrict and change the like flow of revenue, it also constricts the creativity. I think around a lot of these big booms where there's like cool music movements, it's happened because there's people going out, so that DJs and producers are making more money from the clubs or bars or whatever, so they have time during the day to sit down and actually kind of hone their craft and write and make music.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if we don't have that, that's when it gets a little scary to me. Like, oh man, how long is this going to go on?
Right. And how do you make it compelling enough where people would want to pay like a considerable amount? That becomes the question. And I don't know the answer to that. It's like even something today, like where you put up a paywall and be like, all right, it's $5. Even that, I'm like, are people even going to pay $5, let alone the
No,
$25, $30 ticket that we, usually
no, they're
pay?
not. No, not right now. They're not. In a year from now, if we're still locked up,
Right.
sure, yeah.
Right.
But in a year from now, we're not going to be locked up, because after a couple months of this, people are going to be like, "F this! I'm going outside. I don't care."
Right, right. Which, well, there'll be that unless it starts to hit home a little bit. I mean, I think that was the disconnect, for California, or at least LA, people not understanding they need to be inside. It's because like it didn't hit them, whereas people in New York are, my whole family's in New York, and it's like we know people that are suffering right now, right? So I
Right,
think
right,
with everybody, it's like it has to hit you at home for most people to take anything seriously, right? It's like
right.
it for better or for worse, even the most caring people, it's hard for someone to like give a shit about it unless it's like right in their face. So,
Yeah.
and this one's hard because it's invisible, right? So like this one's a hard one for people to wrap their
Well,
heads around.
it's just such a creeper. Like we don't. Like, what is it? It's a problem this week? No, next week. It's ramping up. Like yeah. Until it becomes really real and somebody in your social circle is sick.
Right.
You know.
Right. Right. It's crazy. Um, I wanted to go back a little bit and talk a little bit. I mean, you've been doing a ton. I mean, just kind of reviewing for this interview and kind of just looking at your last fucking year. It's like you've been doing so much on the release tip and just kind of the different brands and things you're doing with the label. But I kind of wanted to go back a little bit to Chicago because,
Yeah.
you know, I've been lucky enough. I've had some residencies in Chicago the last couple of years, so I've actually been going a lot. I've been making real friends there who are kind of new school producers, but you know, it all the house music phenomenon comes from Chicago. Frankie Knuckles, all that stuff, where there was a kind of like switch from disco into the house kind of world. So I really kind of wanted to. It's a little bit of an amorphous question, but like I want to talk about like the early days for you. You were someone going out to the clubs, going for the music, not for the party. And when I mean party, I mean like the drug side of things. And for you, like, what was that draw? Like, do you remember the first show you went to, for example, like the first show where you went to see a DJ in that setting back in the day?
Uh, yes, I remember all of this very well. And I go over and over it in my head, like many of us who are a little bit older do, because you kind of like reminisce about your childhood and romanticize it and, change it and remember the best parts of that. I went out a lot as a kid, a lot, a lot, a lot, but it was different. Let me like frame it just a little bit. House music was just something that was happening. Actually, dude, I just watched it 2 or 3 nights ago, and it's a fascinating documentary. You should watch it. It's Wax Trax Records. It's on Amazon. You can go check it out. They're not house music, but they were certainly a part of like what was happening in Chicago, a huge part of it. And they sat side by side next to all these labels that were doing house music. So it wasn't like necessarily to go see an act. It was more about being part of the scene. Like, this club plays this kind of music on Thursday night. This club plays this kind of music on Friday night. So it's more about being with your people.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, okay, this club, Scrappy's the DJ or Frankie Knuckles is the DJ. These are like local guys that were kind of cutting their teeth and being really progressive as far as what they were playing. And I've mentioned Scrappy in interviews before, because he was the guy that was kind of my clique of people that were going out. He was the guy. Not that we were following him and like, oh, this guy, because it was less about the DJ being an artist producer back then. It was more about, this is their vibe. They're a selector, you know, these are the guys. And listen, it's kind of morphed from that world into currently what it is. You like have Daft Punk on one end, like that's a musical act. They're no different from, I don't know, any pop act that's out there right now touring, to the guys that are just strictly DJs. They're just selectors that are very good at, you know, weaving a tapestry through the night and creating a vibe. They've become masters of that. And then you kind of have everything, technology made it so much easier for the guys in between. Like, I make a track or two every year. This is kind of my vibe, whatever. My buddy's great at drum programming. My other buddy plays drums. I come in, I produce this thing, because it's part of being a DJ, is like understanding the sound and all that, and being a producer. So anyway, that's a big setup. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it short. But for
No.
me, it was more about just being with my people and going out to the clubs and understanding who and what and where, what was being progressive. And kind of the soundtrack at that time was house music, early house records, and a lot of like industrial and Eurobeat and all the stuff. But I think in the Chicago, the kids really kind of took pride in the fact, like, oh, this is a local guy made this record. Ah, that's dope. This is dope. Everybody's going crazy to this record. This is so, dude, this guy lives on the South Side. What, you know? So I think there's, you know, it was more about just being a part of the scene. I liked all of it. I thought the music was cool. I thought the people were cool. People were super progressive, and I just liked the scene. I liked going into the city, either getting driven by my older brother or taking the train or hopping in a car with some friends, whatever. Because I started going out before I could drive. I was 15 when I discovered this stuff. It's like I was going into high school, and there was a teen club called Medusa's that was, you know, it held a couple thousand people. And it was just freaking stuffed every Friday and Saturday. Stuffed, dude, packed. I mean, lying down the block, kids from all over, from in the city, from the suburbs, whatever, everybody just coming. It was bridge and tunnel crowd. Eventually it was in the beginning, it was more of the city kids and like real movers and shakers. And then it kind of like, as it became more of a thing, more of these people were traveling into it and just checking it out.
Right. And I imagine that it was like very fresh as a party goer, because this is all like new music. Like house music wasn't a thing before then, right? So
Dude, you couldn't hear this stuff barely anywhere else. There was a couple specialty mix shows going on in Chicago at the time, like WNUR, Northwestern's radio station. WBMX was you know, they were doing like a Friday and Saturday night mix thing with the Hot Mix 5. So, I mean, it was out there, but you really had to seek it, right? But when you went there, this guy's just playing all sorts of stuff. I'm like, I've never heard any of this stuff.
right.
And that's when I started going to Gramophone Records, which was located not far from the club that I was going. So we'd go down early, dick around the city on Saturday afternoon, go to the record store, get a hot dog, hang out, go to some guy's house that lives, you know, a couple miles away in what part of the city. Then it's like, all right, cool. And then head over to the club and then get home by like, you know, the teen nights were ending, I think at like midnight or 1. So they'd end and then everybody would converge on Dunkin' Donuts, which is on the corner. And like these skaters would break out some little kicker quarter pipe, half, you know, kicker ramp, whatever. And kids would skate and cause ruckus, and the cops would show up and break up that. And then everybody kind of went their way. And that was
Yeah.
like a pretty typical Saturday night.
Sounds like kind of a different version of almost like what the punk scene was doing in New York. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like it's just young kids coming together around a music.
That's
You
it.
know what I mean?
That's it.
Yeah.
And the reason I like that Wax Tracks documentary that I just watched, it's one of the girls' dads who started Wax Tracks in the 70s. She's the one who made the film, and she really kind of captures that. And she talks about how, and a few of the people that they interviewed talk about how Chicago's scene was quite unique because like there was the industrial guys, then there was like the punk scene guys, and then there were these weird like electronic music guys that were into like craft work and all this
Right.
other art of noise, weird stuff. But we were all kind of hanging around the same clubs and the same venues, and we mixed a lot in Chicago. And she talks about how that was a unique thing. And then she interviews like Front 242, and they're like, yeah, it was weird. like punk rock, full like Mohawk guys were coming to our show and having mosh pits, and that was going on at the club. Downstairs was mainly house music, and then upstairs was kind of like this alternative slash industrial. When I say alternative, it was like Susie and the Banshees and The Cure, Depeche Mode,
Right.
you know, and then downstairs was more like skunk, skunk, skunk,
Yeah.
you know. So it was a weird place where it was like all these misfits kind of found a home and were really understanding of one another. And I think that's one of the things for me that was really uh, what I liked about it, because I didn't feel like every freaking teenage kid in high school. I'm like, I'm different. I don't fit in. Nobody understands me. You know? So I was like taking a train to the city and hang out with a bunch of these weirdos and, you know, a handful of kids from my high school that we're all like, we don't fit in, you know, so let's go to the city and, you know, hang out with these kids who have their heads shaved and whatever, you know. So it's just like a scene that accepted everybody. And I liked that. And then in the middle of that was house music, you
Right.
know?
Right. And so, like, you know, I know that you were able to kind of start DJing on your own. You even worked at Ohm Records. You kind of became like into the scene or whatever that developing scene was. But what was the point at which you changed from like, okay, I'm DJing in this world to being a producer? Because I think of you like when I think about Kaskade, I actually think of you as like a producer songwriter first. Obviously I've seen you a million times and I know you DJ, but it's, I see some DJs where it's like, oh, they make bangers, they throw down bangers. It's not necessarily melodic or like a song experience. Whereas with you and your albums and your singles, like these are songs. These are in many cases pop songs. You know what I mean? So
Right.
where was the transition for you being like, all right, I'm in this scene, I'm DJing the scene, and actually I'm going to try to be a writer? Was there like was it a slow progression into that, or was that always happening?
No, I think it was just me noticing. I was just trying to figure out where there was an opportunity. I think living through that whole boom in Chicago and kind of witnessing house music become a thing helped with that, because then I graduated high school in '89 and I left Chicago, and I really have never been back for a significant amount of time other than gigs and whatever, you know, here and there, you know, whatever, a week for Christmas and a week for Thanksgiving. But I didn't like move back. Like, I'm coming back for the summer, Mom. I never did that. Like, after high school, I took off and was gone. But I understood what the scene did. And when I got to San Francisco, which there's a chunk of time in there, you know, whatever, almost 10 years before I got to San Francisco, where I was developing myself as a producer and understanding synthesis and drum programming and sampling. And I was wrapping my head around that and taking time to become a producer, really. Um, that when I got to San Francisco in 2000, I was like, you know, I knew how to, I got that. Cool. I know how to make that. Like, all right, cool. I could do that. I can bang it out at a club. I know how to make some tracky jacking stuff. Like, I got that. But when I got to San Francisco, I could see, and San Francisco's scene was very mature. And I mean, I'll give props to Mark Farina. He'd already been in San Francisco. He was a kid just like me, grew up right outside the city, went to the same record stores I went, experienced the same nightclubs I did. And he was already there doing his thing and kind of setting the scene up, and he was molding that scene. And it seemed like it was Chicago 2.0 to me. I was like, wow, this is a mature version of Chicago. Not only that, I think San Francisco had some amazing musicians that were intrigued by the newness of what electronic music offered. So there were a lot of like bands and producers that were just doing really interesting things. And it was less like 909, 808, more like, cool, we got the 909 and 808. We're going to write a song on top of this. And once again, sorry, we're getting messages here. Once again, these things are, I think the technology tied into it, it became easier to become a songwriter. You know, 30 years ago, one of these guys that was killing on an 808 might have been a brilliant songwriter and was a great musician, but he was just like, his platform became a drum machine instead. That's how he like was able to do it. For me, the recording became easier to do. And like, oh, okay, cool. Computer's powerful enough that I can get, wasn't limited to 12 tracks anymore. I could have
Right.
36, and Pro Tools, the 001 came out, and I could jack a mic right into it. And, and, and record somebody. So when I saw these people doing more musical things, that's a long story to say. When I saw them doing this stuff, I was like, I think I can do that too. I already kind of have this basis of like, okay, I know how to make tracks, but like, what's up with like writing songs? What's going on? And I think the timing was right because I felt fairly confident in my production skills at that point. And I always kind of fancied myself a little bit of a writer in college. Like I wrote a lot, and I was like, I can kind of write. Like I don't know. My grandma was an amazing poet, and she wrote all this stuff. And anytime she came to visit, she was like writing poems about what I was doing. And I like to think I have a little bit of that in me. I'm not nearly as good as she was, but yeah, I mean, it was, meeting the right people, being in the right studios, being in the right scene, and kind of seeing everything happen, and me being like, okay, cool. Everyone's going to have a sampler in a minute. DAWs, like the software's getting to the point where you can run it anywhere. I need to set myself apart. And honestly, when I started Kaskade, I didn't know even what that was going to be. I was like, is that going to be me? Am I going to make this into a live band experience? What am I going to do? The whole idea was to make it very organic in nature. I wanted to be able to record and track musicians and work with great songwriters. And that was the idea, to make it like a very big project. And then just after the first couple singles, I'm living in San Francisco, struggling. So anyway, all of that's to say it was a very focused decision to try and do more songwriting. Put out those first few records. People start calling, they want to book Kaskade. I'm like, okay, what is Kaskade? And I named it something that was just arbitrary, that was just like Kaskade could be whatever. If I showed up with 7 people, I'm like, oh yeah, we're a band. Right. Nobody's gonna say anything. Like, right. Cool, we're a full live experience. And I didn't know what it was gonna be when I put this stuff out. But cut to the fact that I'm like freaking broke and like barely able to make rent, or not making rent in San Francisco, and pretty much living off of what Naomi, my wife, was making. She worked at the Levi Strauss headquarters there in San Francisco. When people started calling to book Kaskade for a gig and were willing to pay me, $200-300 to come play some of the records that I'd made, I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. I was like, I'll take anything. So, and even at that point, I memean, that first 6 months, I was kind of like, well, this could morph into be whatever it needs to be. Like it could change into this, it could change into that. Right. But I wasn't like, oh, it has to be this. I just was like, cool. I knew what I wanted the sound to be, and I knew I wanted to be much more a part of the writing than what was currently trendy on the dance music circuit. I wanted to be, more of what these bands that I was listening to sounded like.
Right, right. And actually, at that time, I mean, if you're in the 2000s, there already had been a couple artists that had come out in that kind of hybrid middle ground of, are they a DJ, are they a songwriter? I mean, even Daft Punk, whatever, 96 or 97 when that stuff broke out. I mean,
yep.
You actually, at that time, we didn't know what it is, or we weren't in that mindset of categorizing it like, oh, they're a DJ. It's not, even though it's electronic music.
Totally. I mean, it's good that you reference that stuff, because that it changes where my head was at. I was just seeing Daft Punk and these guys, and bands like the Sneaker Pimps and Solstice, and like some of these cool guys doing stuff that I'm like, what is this? What are they? I don't know.
Right. So. And like Massive Attack, a lot of like those UK, like, who I really liked? I used to like Everything But the Girl. I thought were really, really great. They
man.
And the songwriting too, actually, now I'm just thinking of it now. It's like, actually there's connections, I feel like, between some of the stuff you do with the female vocals,
100%, dude. 100%. Those first sessions that I was in doing Kaskade stuff, I'm listening to Everything But the Girl, pulling one of the songs into a session and being like, how in the hell are they doing this?
Yeah.
But not only that, think about that, dude. They had, now I forget which track it was, because, whatever, it's 25 years old, whatever, but they had a huge Masters at Work remix of one of their songs. And what was cool about them is they were always getting like, whoever the flavor of the moment was, they're getting that guy to remix their biggest single. And guess what? I'm in the club playing their singles. And I was like, cool, I don't want to be everything but the girl. I want to be the guy that's doing this remix could be an original to me.
Right. Right.
Like, what's this? Why doesn't this exist? Nobody's doing this.
Right.
And
Right.
even, dude, I still think that now. It's like, Black Coffee produced the Drake single. And, right now kind of techie stuff is happening. Like tech house stuff is cool. I'm like, any minute now, there's going to be some cool crossover track. Like some pop act's going to sing on some kind of cool boom, 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 rolling techie thing that we're like, wait, what? That backing record, I've been playing that for 5 years. What?
It's going to be
Like,
Britney. It's going to be Britney. She'll do it.
somebody's going to do it. It always
Yeah.
takes somebody to be like, oh, this is cool. This is what's happening in a club.
Well, that must be trippy for you, like having seen the beginning of house. And then like in general, house to me is like this weird amorphous term because it's like, people, when people were talking about house 3 years ago, it meant something different than it is now. It's like some people are like saying house and it's like super heavy, hard shit. And I'm like, wait, that's not what I think about. But I've come to terms with the fact that it's almost like how EDM is now like an umbrella term. It's, you know what I mean? Like you're talking about dance music, you're talking about
Oh,
EDM,
man.
and it's a genre,
Yeah.
right? So house seems to be this kind of umbrella term and a genre. So like for you, like that must be so weird to see like the likes of like Solardo, Chris Lake, all these really great tech house producers kind of bringing it back in a way, even though it's a new take, it is kind of throwback on some level.
It's awesome. Listen, about the whole house EDM.
Yeah.
For me and my world, because I've been around for a while, it's like house and the word EDM, they're just like irreplaceable. I was the guy back in the day when people were like electronica or whatever. I'm like, can we just call it house music? Can we just,
Right.
can everyone not get behind a word that's been around for a minute? It's freaking cool that nobody, and to me, it also kind of meant like Chicago one. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
bitches,
Right.
trance sucks,
Right.
like whatever. Because
Right.
back then it was very much about that. Like, we weren't like, no, hip hop, that ain't cool. House music, house music. It was very about a pure thing. And anyway, I was the guy fighting for, I wish the fact that I just wish that house would have become that word to kind of be the umbrella term for everything that is EDM.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm just happy that people are calling it something, because in my, in the not so distant past, people just didn't even freaking care. And like a DJ making a good living would have lived in some crappy flat,
Right.
in the valley, and like that was cool. And like I was willing to do that when I kind of like started going down this road. I was like, yeah, whatever, man, this is what I love. Like, I won't ever have a lot of money, maybe I won't own a nice car, but I'm gonna do what I like to do.
But then what was that turning point then? Because we look at 2010 2009 as being this kind of explosion that everyone talks about, and you were really right there in the middle of it with Skrillex and Avicii and all. You were right at the fucking epicenter. So like for you, I'm just trying to think of like from 2000 you're in San Francisco trying to make rent to like then 2009 when you're doing like fucking I Remember with Deadmau5, you know what I mean? Like did you see it like a wave coming, or was it like all of a sudden you were like, oh shit, this is like people are now paying attention? Like what was your specific experience for once from like that 2000 to like then the explosion, because that's like 10 years.
Yeah, it was a long 10 years.
Yeah.
I think it was hard to see it coming, much like this COVID-19 thing, because it's so slow. By the time that it's there, you're like, oh my gosh, we're in the middle of this.
Yeah.
What the hell's happening? It was kind of like that, in the fact that like, dude, in 2002, 2005, 2006, like clubs were bumping. Like it was slowly, like it used to be like I'd go to some place in like Dayton, Ohio, cool, and I'm playing like some 250 person room, and it's some guy's sound system, and the promoter's picking you up at the airport and you're sleeping on his floor, to the next year it's like, wow, we're in a 400 person room, this is an actual club. The place before was like a pizza parlor at night that we moved the tables and put in a sound system, people paid $5. Now like, oh damn, we're in a club, oh it's 500 people, the sound systems and stuff. So it's like this slow progression over that 10 years from 150 200 person parties to, oh my gosh, we're filling up an 800 cap nightclub and there's a line down the block Like, what's the next move? Where's the next room, dude? What do we do next? Um, yeah, so it was a very slow, gradual process. So I didn't know. I just kept being like, this thing's getting bigger. Like, what? Like, people are really into this, man.
But I
like
remember
what?
one year, like at the Grammys, like maybe it's 2011, where it was like, now we have DJs here and we're like featuring DJs. Like there's definitely like a thing where like there was a flip. You could just see it in culture, American culture. Obviously, other places had it before, but
Right.
we were almost like we were just like so slow to pick it up. But then obviously, then we twisted it and kind of made it our own. In terms of
Sure.
what because like
Sure.
I think of like Dirty Bird's version of house music as being very separate from any of like the European house music. Same with like the dubstep, where it's like American dubstep is very different from the UK shit that kind of
Yep.
started it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and that's crazy. That's when we first met. I think we first met the day that you shut down Hollywood when you took a flatbed trailer and hold on, this actually, now I'm
Uh,
thinking about this, is actually a good story because I don't know if everybody knows about this, but basically we had just met and you were like, yeah, I'm going to go play in Hollywood. And basically you had your turntable set up on like a flatbed, like the back of a tractor trailer, right?
yeah.
And
Yep.
did you just roll? It was in front of like the Man Chinese Theater, like right in like the most popular place in Hollywood. So did you just like roll up and play a set? What was the vibe there?
So we met that day
We met that day. We met that
in the
day.
morning or something. Like,
We met
what?
we met
That's
we met that day at in like Oliver's office that day, and or
that's craziness.
yeah. There was that, and then we went to some very small club show. I remember that you played at Playhouse, which doesn't even exist anymore. It was like this all white room in Hollywood.
I played Playhouse that night.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
After,
right
so
after that.
we met that night in the back
We
when
met
I
that night in
came
the
in, and we
back.
hang out, and there were some round like
And
booths that we were all
okay,
hanging
so
out in.
funny story.
Okay.
That back is what turned into Space Yacht. So they redid that, and that became the Golden Box. That was that speakeasy back room, the old writers' room. That was year
Oh,
one of Space Yacht is where we were. So it was crazy. I met you there, and I was like, oh wait, we're gonna throw this part. I don't know. But anyway, so back to the story. So let the people know what what happened that day.
what happened there? I had scored a movie. It's the only movie I've ever scored. I did it for the Insomniac movie, and they were like, "Hey, cool, we're gonna show it at the Man Chinese Theater for the opening." Blah blah blah. And my idea was like, "Hey, man, can you get a permit to close down a lane of traffic that's closest to the theater?" And they're like, "Yeah, let us look into it." I'm like, because in Brazil, I've played on the back of these flatbed trucks before with moving crowds. And I'm like, it's freaking sick, man. We get a flatbed truck, put a sound system on, it'll be awesome. I'll roll up. And Man's Chinese Theater, as you know, is kind of pushed off the back. There's room to gather. You can get 1,000 people there easy. And I thought, it's this movie about EDC. How cool that I roll up, I score the movie. It's this private screening. 1,000 people show up, whatever, 500 people show up, whatever that number is. A few people show up and I DJ, and then we shut it down and kind of go in and watch the movie. That was the idea. We okayed it with the Insomniac team, I guess. I don't know, we'd have to have Pasquale in here to tell his side of the story. I guess he didn't know about it. Anyway, I hadn't played in LA in probably like a year. And I had been doing a ton of overseas stuff that summer, whatever. I just, for whatever reason. And this was when Twitter was brand new, dude. I mean, this is like new technology to our world. It had been around for a year or two, whatever. But it's like, I had something like 7,000 people on there. I'm like, oh, I just ate milk duds. Like, I didn't even know what to say on it,
Right.
I had eggs for breakfast. What are you doing? Hey, guys. So it was still kind of this weird thing. Anyway, as I'm driving into LA, Naomi's sitting next to me, and I'm like, man, it would be cool if some people could show up. On the night before, I went on Facebook. This is when I still actually myself was putting stuff up, and I said, hey, I know I haven't played here in a little while, but I'm gonna do this thing in front of Man's Chinese Theater. If you're around in or around Hollywood at this time, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, come on by. I'll play a few records before the movie. you know, but still, even on Facebook, I like, you know, 5,000 people follow me or something like that. So we're driving up and I'm Naomi, I'm like, type in and you know, me plus you plus speakers equals block party. And I had her do like 3 or 4 tweets as I'm driving into the city. And yeah, man, I don't know. The rest is history, like thousands and thousands, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10,000. You look at the aerial shots. We have some aerial shots and we have some video footage. We were in a parking lot, probably about, I don't know, a mile away, you know, not that far away, 6 blocks, 7 blocks. And we see the news choppers and the guys who had put the truck together were just like, shit is getting totally crazy, man. We got to go now. Like there's thousands and thousands of people congregating and they're shutting down traffic and we got to get going now. And I'm like, yeah, cool, man. We went about 3 blocks and it just was just like, and as we got closer, I was like, oh, this is getting really, this is crazy. By this time, there's like 3 news choppers overhead. And it just got completely out of control. The guy driving the truck, like about every 100 feet would be like, I can't go any further. I'm not. And I'm like, shut up, you pussy. Drive effing truck. Get me to man's truck. Because I have a microphone. And I'm like, look, if I get there, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to play a few records. Everybody, yay. And then everybody would disperse. Dude, it's a bunch of ravers. Nobody's there to like gang bang or hurt anyone. We're not going to like turn cop cars over on their back. I mean, it's a pretty chill crowd.
Yeah.
And I think when you just get kind of, people got worried and the police got worried. So as we got closer, some cops started approaching us. The guy driving the truck's like, I'm out of here. And there's some footage somewhere of us just like squealing away and me screaming at him, go down there. You know, I could see, we were maybe a block and a half, 2 blocks from man. I mean, I could see the madness. And we already had a bunch of people around us. They found out where it was and started coming towards us. But yeah, it was a crazy night. And like, you know, whatever, the next day I woke up to like 150,000 Twitter followers. I mean, it's just like stuff just went bananas after that.
I heard it. I heard the choppers from my house because I lived right next to the Capitol Records buildings, and you were right.
Oh man,
it's like right there. So like that.
Yeah.
And then I saw this was when TMZ was still like very big, or like Perez Hilton or something. And I remember seeing it on one of those where it's like Kaskade shutting down Hollywood, and I was like, dude, that's just a crazy.
It awesome. Was a real thing, man. Yeah, dude. And that night, the cops, like about 6 or 7 cops, showed up to the club and harassed me.
Oh, really?
We need your ID, blah, blah, blah. You're in a lot of trouble. And, you know, the city ended up being cool at the end of the day. But for a minute there, they were threatening all this stuff. And I was like, dude, I didn't tweet that stuff to create, you know, pandemonium. I wasn't trying to cause some problems. We didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know. We didn't, you know, I thought 500, 1,000, 1,500 people show up. I don't, you know, it's the middle of the freaking afternoon on like Thursday or Friday or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I left the next morning for Ibiza. I called my attorney. I'm like, what do I do, man? All these cops showed up. He's like, get on the plane, go to Ibiza. I'm like, yeah, all right.
Nice. All right. I've got so many questions, but I don't want to keep you here forever. So, all right. So I have one that I wanted to ask you. Then I want to talk about Sexy, the new single, which is crazy because you did that.
Yeah.
You did that with Kosher Dills, who's also, his name is Rami. And I've actually met him. We did a session together like a year ago because my friend was like, oh, Rami, you need to meet Rami, and you're both Jewish, and go hang out and whatever. And then you put out Sexy, a couple weeks ago or very recently. Yeah. And then I was like, Kosher Dills, that's my guy. He's an awesome guy. That record, actually, let's talk about that now. I mean, that record, I love it because it really has that house, that bass house, like big stage house vibe to it, which, I think is very much like when you see your sets, you've always been playing that kind of stuff, but like as a release, I feel like it's a very current sound that people like really fuck with. But then I saw the video from Italy of somebody playing it off their balcony and was like, that's like a whole nother dimension of this song now for me, because like if I heard it at a festival and I saw you at EDC and heard that would be a certain setting for that, and that would be a certain memory. But now with this record, all I can think about is like that quarantine street and someone playing it off the balcony. I mean I mean that in a good way. No. I mean that in a way of like of beautiful humans doing something beautiful together.
Right.
you know, how did you see that video? You know, because so for those who don't know, there was a video a couple weeks ago of somebody playing the new Kaskade track out of their balcony,
It's
and
got it,
everybody.
which by the way, it's got to be fake. I didn't make it. It got sent to me, but I'm like, I'm sure this is fake. I'm
Why? Just
sure
because
it is.
you thought somebody overdubbed the track, or
Because every star's Twitter feed and Instagram is like, they're singing my song. I'm like, there's no way.
I mean,
I mean,
you're a pretty big dude. I mean, there is a way. I think there's a
and
way.
listen, but you're right. Anything's possible. My mind is always blown. I mean, whatever. You never know. I mean, dude, I've been standing in a Burger King in London before, and It's You, It's Me comes on, and I'm like, what the? I mean, you never know. So anything's possible. But I mean, I'm just always freaked out when I see my music because someplace or hear it someplace different than what we're used to, right? Because we're used to going to nightclubs and hearing this stuff, and that's
Right.
like our setting for this stuff. So anytime, I mean, even when I'm in a car and somebody's playing it, and I'm always just, I don't know, man, I'm just happy and grateful that like somebody else is listening besides like just a handful of my friends and my wife and stuff. I'm like, really? You like it? Ah.
I mean, it's
Um,
honestly, it's crazy to hear you say that, because I mean, I think that's we're all of the rest of us are like, well, I wonder what it would be like to have that. And it's amazing that you're still like, you feel the same way we do, which is like, oh shit, I'm just making music in a room with my friends, right? I mean, that's what it's all
yeah,
about at the end of the day, right?
dude, if I've learned anything over the last week, I mean, I've always been like this. You can't take anything for granted, man. This is just like life, all of it, whatever. I'm always blown away. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel the same now when I hear somebody play my record on a mix show, and like I happen to be in some sitting, I'm sitting in the promoter's car going to the club and somebody's playing it, or whatever. Sirius XM, when they started really playing my stuff, I mean, I was just like, holy crap, they're really playing this stuff. People are out there listening to this. This is crazy. Um, yeah, you can't take any of that stuff for granted.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's an amazing feeling every time.
100%. All right, I want to get to one more of my questions, and then I want to actually ask you some of the questions I got from Twitter, because I went on Twitter yesterday saying, "Hey, if you have any questions for Kaskade, let me know." It's always
Nice, nice.
always good. But so for me, I have a lot of songs that are my favorites of yours, but I think I Remember is like, to me, the one that hits me the most.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's also a very important record for you, because it was you and Dead Mouse together. It was this time that we were talking about kind of the explosion of all of this. So I personally, I wanted to know, like, what was the experience of that specific record, like you and Joel working on that together? Was that something where you were in the room together working on the record? Is it something where you're passing it back and forth? But like specifically, I Remember, like, what was the process on that tune?
Um, the process, it was me hearing a couple of Joel's songs, Faxing Berlin, and a couple of these tunes that were just, they were just huge. And to kind of rewind to get in the mindset of what was happening at the time. House was house, trance was trance. Things were very genre specific. There wasn't a lot of melding going on. House kids thought trance kids were chumps. Trance kids, you know, they didn't. These were different things, man. They were like different worlds. Oh, those are the furry boot guys. It's like they were very different. Dead Mouse came along, and why he was just so massive and is still completely relevant today is because he found some kind of like interesting middle ground where I was like, I am house music to the core, but I hear that and I'm like, that's freaking sick. What is that? It's like kind of house music, but it's proggy, but it's those chord progressions are crazy. What is that synth? This is nuts. I love it. And it was like this for everyone. So it was like jacking house guys like Roger Sanchez were dropping his tracks, and Chemical Brothers were dropping his tracks, but yet then like full like Armin van Buuren and guys that are like playing at 145, trance guys were playing his tracks. And I'm just like, it just hit everyone the same. Everyone could like it. And that's it, like transcended what was currently happening. So me, like many of the other people, and when I say that, it transcended, our world was still quite small at the time. So it was easy to make impact. People were really watching Beatport and what was working there. And Dead Mouse is working because the DJs were buying the stuff and playing it. And back then I used to do this a lot more. I would just take some instrumental track that I think is cool and just write to it. Especially if I had a vocalist coming in to cut a track. I'd be like, oh, Haley's got time. She's going to come into the studio tomorrow. I got to write something for her to sing. I just take some kind of cool instrumental track. I wouldn't like, oh, start from scratch. Like, what are the chords, whatever. I just take some cool track, write a song over it. Haley comes in, sings the song, delete the track, start from zero. Okay, cool. I got to come up with new chords. Okay, cool. Find some drums. You know, it's at 126, and then just build the track around the vocal. I had done this with the Dead Mouse song, and it came out so sick. I was like, I'm like, this is. And at this point, Dead Mouse wasn't releasing vocal songs. He was just this guy like, I'm gonna program. I know how to program synthesizers really well, which he's still kind of like that. So I reached out to him. I just had a buddy who over at Beatport, and he was just like, hey man, I was just like, hey dude, I want to hit Dead Mouse up. He's making cool stuff. I think I could collab with him. He's not doing vocal stuff. I'm writing a ton of songs right now. I think we could collab somehow. He gave me his AIM. So instant messenger, I just hit him up like, bro, what's up? This is Kaskade. And he's like, you're that crazy fool who's doing 3 gigs in one night. Because that year I hit him in like October, November or something like that. And I was advertising. I was doing San Francisco, Las Vegas, and LA all in one night for New Year's Eve. And he's like, you're so, what? That's stupid. Why? How are you going to do that? Like, why do you want to work that hard? Anyway, I'm like, nah, man, it's fun. Anyway, I played him the song and he was like, oh, this is really cool.
And was it that track as is, or was it like the sketch of the track, or?
It was the sketch, the vocal, which I had, you know, by that time fully produced and got it. But it was, and then I put his track back underneath it. I'm like, cool. This is an idea. Do you have anything original laying around, dude? You should do something. And then I had a brief conversation. Listen, this is all over typing. We're not speaking. This is, and I'm just saying, making a song where you have lyrics and melody that hit along with production that's intriguing and forward thinking, that is when you have like a global, that's when like, that's lightning in a bottle, right? To me, that's always when I hear a song that the lyrics speak to me, the melody is just like licking honey. And then the production itself is something cool. That's a freaking bona fide, like this is something special. So I'm like, dude, I think we can achieve this between the two of us. And he's like, okay, funny you say that. I have this track. I think it's freaking huge. See if you can write something on top of it. He sends me, I remember, shitty demo. And I get it. And I'm like, this is huge. Dude, this is so big. These chords are so cool. It's totally unpredictable. No one would do that. That's very random, but yet it works so well. And I was like, I already have a melody in my head. I have something I want to put on top of this. Give me a day. And sure enough, dude, like that night, I set the mic up, sat there, said gibberish into the mic, hammered out the melody within like an hour or two, called up Haley, was like, can you come in? I had him a vocal, like within days of him giving me that, I had him the vocal. And he's like, oh man, this sounds so good. What are you recording through? What mic is that? You know, so we started talking like nerd secrets. And yeah, it was just a cool moment. And we knew we had something special right away. Even he was just like, damn, this sounds so cool. This is cool. And then I was just like, well, I'm working on an album. And that's what I had hit him up about. I was like, you know, we could probably put this on the record, but, and he's like, well, I'm working on some stuff. I'm like, well, let's do 2 tracks. You can have one, I can have one. I'll hold the copyright for one. You can hold the copyright for one. You know, we worked it out. And that's how Move For Me happened. The same way type of thing. Except for that, it was different. I recorded Haley in a couple different ways, sent it to him. Then he sent me some stuff back. And I don't know, there's a couple other tracks out there that happened because of that I should go scrub some hard drives. But eventually Move For Me happened. Yeah. But yeah, we didn't, dude, that whole time we didn't speak to each other. Winter Music Conference that next year in March, we're in a club and somebody's like, yo, Dead Mouse is over here. And I was like, did you guys work on something together? And I'm like, yeah, where is he, man? So I go over and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And it was this weird, like, he's kind of awkward. And I was like, hey, we made a big song together. That's cool, man. What's up? Like, we're in a nightclub. I don't. What are you doing? You know, I'm just like,
Oh my God. That was awesome. You totally fulfilled my dream of the answer to that question. That was rich. I appreciate that. Um, all right, we're going to some Twitter questions because people had some Twitter questions for you, and I thought that was
right,
interesting.
yeah,
So, well, I'll go to the kind of more funny ones kind of later, but I like this one. This one comes from uh, Rob Verbs 85 at Rob
yeah.
Verbs 85. He asks, "What is your favorite overall complete set that you've performed at any venue, and describe that feeling?" So, what is your favorite set of all time, no matter where it is, and what was that feeling? It's a good question.
I don't know, and I think that would change from day to day depending on when you caught me. But I will say this: 2009 EDC main stage. It's the first time I played main stage. I don't really totally know what I played that night. I'm sure I could find a recording of the set somewhere. But look, it wasn't necessarily about the set and the execution, everything that happened. There was just that moment kind of signified. It was significant in so many ways because to me, 2009 was like, oh, it's arrived. Like, there's no turning back now, man. And it wasn't, my career coincided with that moment of me realizing, like, wow, this thing is reached some other level and it's not gonna come back. We're moved out of the underground now. We're
Right.
on some other thing. I mean, I'm looking out at like 70,000 kids, like, and I'm just like, bopping it up on that main stage. And I'm just like, we're in some other zone, man. This is
Yeah.
not, this is not some little scene anymore.
Yeah. You're overground, underground to
Yeah.
the overground.
Yeah. So, and that was the moment. And, well, and there's a lot of cool things technically. I was the first guy at EDC to ever have a VJ, and I had cues and moments that we had planned. And I mean, nobody had ever done this at a EDM festival. Like, what? You've got your own crap on the screen. I mean, dude, they had a VJ. That, you know, it's like you would show up at clubs and they just play like strippers on a pole. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I want my own. I have songs that mean something. I'm going to put certain content up when I play those songs.
Right.
And we had worked hard to get to that moment, and I had found somebody and worked with that guy Mike Burakoff to like create a vibe, and it was a whole thing that we were trying to execute. And somebody's going to be, because I put, I don't know, a few years ago I found some footage of them at front of house, like it was him and Lauren Kronk, who I believe you've met before, you
Mm-hmm.
know, doing their thing. And I was like, yeah, I was one of the first guys to do this, if not the first. I believe that I am. I don't know. Somebody's like, well, what about Daft Punk? I'm like, dude, that was a whole
Yeah.
spectacle. That was a show that was pre-filmed, and they're standing up there. I'm up
Right.
there like literally DJing live. I mean, they were VJing live. It was a whole untested technology. Anyway, we could talk
Right.
forever about that, but that was a big one. That was a big one. Winter Music Conference, when It's You, It's Me came out, me playing to about 1,000 people, like losing their minds. When It's You,
Mm.
It's Me came out, like maybe 3 weeks prior to that, 2 weeks prior to that, was
Mm-hmm.
another huge moment.
Right. Um, actually, I've not a Twitter question, but kind of based off a Twitter question, because this person asked you, um, at Big J Cloud said, "Where does his music normally originate from? His music hits the soul and has helped me get through tough times. I'd be interested to know where it all starts. Um, does it start around a vocal, or does the inspiration come from putting together something so? Where does the inspiration come from to put something together so perfect?" Now, before you answer that question, I actually wanted to go back to a quote that I always I'm like torn about. So Chuck Close, you know, is a famous painter. He has this famous quote that I was thinking about this morning, and it said, the quote is from Chuck Close. It says, "The advice I'd like to give young artists, or really anybody who will listen to me, is not to wait around for inspiration. Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work." So my question for you is, do you believe that, or do you believe in inspiration? Because if Chuck Close is basically saying, put in the hours, and if you put in the hours, that thing will come, because inspiration can't be premeditated, right? It's just going to come to you because you put in the hours. But I also, there's some days where I'm like, no, I picked up the guitar and the song was there immediately, and I was inspired. You know, there's something that inspired me. So for you, like, are you someone who's a big believer in inspiration? Is that where you start every track, or is it something that kind of comes from different places?
Okay. I'm somewhere in between two of those things. And so are you, dude. Look, I agree with you. Some days you sit it, dude, It's You, It's Me. That song, arguably one of my biggest hits. I remember, dude, that happened in the matter of like, I wrote the melody and lyrics that came in minutes. We're talking less than 20 minutes. This interview has been going longer. Okay, cool. It's a song that we can talk about. I've got dozens of songs like that. It happens really quickly when it happens. But I think what he's saying is you have to show up. My deal is like, cool, if you're not feeling inspired that moment, I sit down and write an email and respond to you like, hey man, yeah, cool, let's do that interview, or let me listen to these promos. There's so much you can be doing to work on your career and be doing something like listen to promos, putting cue points in, getting a set ready. Dude, it's endless. I mean, dude, I could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and never finish my to-do list. It's not like I get to at 5 o'clock. I'm like, well, I don't have anything left to do today,
Right.
whatever. So my thing is, if I sit in the studio and it's cool, I'm not like flush with ideas and stuff's happening and not happening. I don't like call it a wrap and go home. No, man, I go out and I do some other crap that's important to my career,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't take me having like a really cool moment or a neat idea. So you got to just keep showing up until those moments happen. Eventually they're going to happen, right? Some days are much better than others. Some weeks are better. Some months are better than others, dude.
Yeah.
Some years are better than others, dude. I look back in like 2005, 2006, I go through my catalog and it's like, I wasn't totally clicking, like I wasn't DJing every single weekend. It's like my career was starting to happen, but I spent so much time in the studio those 2 years. It's like a third of my catalogs from that, like, 20 months or so. It's crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, I was just clicking. I didn't notice it at the time, but it was just happening.
Right. Right. Um, I think we're good. I think
Yeah,
that,
man.
I mean, I've got some other, as I look at these other Twitter questions, like one girl wants you to come to her wedding. Hold on, let's give her a shout out because she was bold enough to DM me this. She says, this is at Maita. She said, I've been trying to invite him to my wedding. I want him there as a guest. He's my role model, and I've been listening to him since elementary school. Could you pass the word along? So
Wow.
pass the word.
Elementary school.
I mean, that's the deal. Oh, this is a good one. This one comes from Divide by Jiro. He says, how did you end up meeting Jay-Z? And there was a picture of you shaking Jay-Z's hand. I don't know where it's from.
For the last 3 years, I was managed by Rock Nation.
Right.
And I've
Okay.
actually hung out with Jay-Z quite a bit.
There it is.
I just like had lunch with Jay-Z, but I'm no longer with Rock Nation. So I think those meetings will be few and far between now. But he's a cool guy, and it came through that connection through my management company.
There it
That's his
is.
management company. So yeah, he was very, very cool and extremely willing to give me his ear and sit down. Like literally, I sat right like this with him and would talk about my career and where he thinks I should go. And those aren't moments you whip out the one like, "What's up, dude?"
Right. Right.
More like, "Damn it, this dude's sitting. This dude's done everything. What do you think? How can you help me?" And like willing to like just sit there and like give me knowledge for a while. It's awesome. It was cool. Very, very cool guy. Nothing but respect for that.
Yeah.
For that
Legend.
man.
Well, dude, Ryan, thank you so much. I appreciate the
Yeah.
time, and this is like
Yeah.
really, as a huge fan of yours, this was very enriching for me just to hear your take on a lot of these things, and I hope the fans out there like it as well. And yeah, this is awesome,
It's good to
super
sit
awesome.
down, dude. I
Great,
appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, man.
yeah, man, for sure.